Major breaking news just into CNN. According to a U.S. defense official, Iran just seized U.S. Navy boats. 10 American sailors have been detained. This is breaking news right now. Let's bring in CNN Chief National Security Correspondent Jim Sciutto. Jim, what can you tell us?
Jake, a potentially alarming situation underway, certainly serious. We have word from both defense officials and a senior administration official that two small U.S. Navy boats, they were in transit from Kuwait rather, to Bahrain, that they were detained by Iranian naval vessels with 10 U.S. sailors on board. The U.S. has since been in touch with Iranian authorities who confirm that those 10 sailors are in Iranian custody, although the senior administration official tells us that they've been assured by Iranian authorities that they will soon be released. They've been assured that they are healthy and in good condition. Regardless, however, in those dangerous waters there, a conflict between, really military, between U.S. and Iran. Just to have those sailors in Iranian custody, certainly a very serious situation. You may remember, Jake, just a couple of weeks ago, an Iranian small naval boat fired rockets very close to a U.S. aircraft carrier, also in the Persian Gulf, taken at the time by officials I spoke with as at least a message. They were not trying to put that U.S. aircraft carrier in danger, but it was certainly a message. And this one you might be able to take as one as well. And I don't have to mention the timing tonight with the president giving his final State of the Union address, where he'll be certain or very likely to mention the Iran nuclear deal, which is days away from implementation. Implementation meaning when those punishing economic sanctions on Iran will be lifted in conjunction with that nuclear deal. The timing of this with the State of the Union, with that nuclear deal coming, certainly very dangerous and concerning timing, Jake.
Very, very strange timing, Jim Sciutto. Let's now go to the Pentagon, where Barbara Starr has more on these 10 American sailors who have been detained by Iran. Barbara, what can you tell us?
Jake, a senior defense official here at the Pentagon has just finished briefing reporters on this incident. What this official is telling us, it was a short time ago that two United States Navy small craft were on their way from Kuwait to Bahrain in the Persian Gulf. And apparently, according to this official, indeed, it appears, he says, that the two U.S. Navy craft entered Iranian territorial waters briefly. Now, this is very tight water space. What the U.S. cannot say at this point is, frankly, is whether it was an intentional breach of Iranian waters or unintentional. That remains to be seen. This is happening near Farsi Island, Iran's Farsi Island, in the Persian Gulf. What we are told is the U.S. Navy lost contact with these two small patrol craft that were carrying a total of 10 sailors. They lost contact with them. They got no apparent distress call that we know of at this point. They began a wider area search and very quickly determined that the Iranian military, Iranian naval authorities apparently had the sailors. Diplomacy sprung into action very quickly, we're told. The Secretary of State John Kerry, speaking to his counterparts, we are told at this hour that these sailors, U.S. Navy sailors, will be allowed by Iran shortly, if not already, to continue their voyage, their planned trip from Kuwait to Bahrain. But I have to tell you, this U.S. official that just finished briefing reporters could not say at this very point in time whether the Navy sailors have been released by the Iranians, whether they left the Farsi Island area, and their status. But it's a very interesting, diplomatic, sensitive dance they're doing right now. They are not willing to say just at this moment that the U.S. Navy sailors are being detained by Iran, because they say Iran has assured the United States these sailors will be allowed to continue their journey, that they are safe, that they are well, and that they will be allowed to continue their journey. So a lot of international, very quick diplomacy, very urgent diplomacy, and military diplomacy going on at this hour. Not at all clear exactly how the U.S. military lost contact with these two boats, how the boats apparently entered Iranian territorial space, and who exactly from Iran came out from Farsi Island and took these sailors into custody, if you will, even if it was very briefly, even if officially under international law they were not detained, they certainly were held by Iran. Jake?
All right, some stunning news coming from the Pentagon. Barbara Starr confirming reports that 2 boats, 10 American sailors have been, I don't know what word to use other than detained, even though the Pentagon is not using that word officially, detained, but they are in the custody of Iran right now in the Persian Gulf, although it seems as though Iran is offering reassurances to the Obama administration that the sailors will be released. Let's talk about this with Republican Senator from Colorado, Cory Gardner, who also sits on the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks for joining me. Obviously, you were booked to talk about foreign policy writ large and the President's State of the Union, but this is some stunning news. We're both learning about it at the same time. Assuming that what the officials are telling Barbara Starr are accurate, what's your reaction to this news?
Well, I think the White House needs to be honest and transparent as quickly as possible with the members of the Congress, the House and the Senate. Perhaps that even means a delay to the start of the State of the Union tonight to talk about exactly what happened. Look, this continues apparently a pattern of aggravating action by Iran. We know that Iran has taken ships that were under the flag protectorate of the United States. We know they continue to test ballistic missiles in spite of the sanctions against them. This is a pattern by Iran now apparently detaining U.S. sailors. We don't know the facts yet. We'll get the facts, but I think this is a serious enough event that we shouldn't proceed with the festivities of tonight until we have answers.
Well, let me ask you, because independent of what is going on right now with, if you're just tuning in, 2 American boats, 10 American sailors in the custody right now of Iranian military officials, although Iran is assuring the United States that they will release these 10 American sailors. Even regardless of that crisis or whatever you want to call it right now, you mentioned the ballistic missile test by Iran. You mentioned, or rather Barbara and Jim Sciutto mentioned, the firing of the Iranians against an American vessel. It didn't hit it, but it was a firing upon it. This does not seem like a country that the United States is engaged in this huge diplomatic engagement with, and this, removal of the sanctions, all of which is supposed to start soon.
Iran is set to receive billions and billions of dollars in economic activity from around the world, the cash released to Iran as a result of this agreement on the nuclear deal. This agreement ought to be delayed until we find out exactly what's happening, until we know what the administration is going to move forward with sanctions on the ballistic missile tests. Again, this is a nation that is holding journalists captive in Iran. This is a nation that has been responsible for the deaths of Americans. In fact, General Dunford testified before the United States Congress saying that at least 500 men and women, soldiers in our country, were killed because of Iranian activities in the Middle East.
Right, Iran giving weapons to Shiite enemies in Iraq.
That's correct. And here we are now on the eve of the president's, or the night of the president's State of the Union address, and Iran detaining American soldiers. This is a pattern of aggravating action by Iran that proves that when the ink is dried on the Iran nuclear deal, when implementation day occurs, this pattern of activity is going to continue. I think it's irresponsible of the United States to allow this to go forward. It's irresponsible of our partners around the globe who were a part of this agreement to ignore these continued hostilities by Iran.
Let's talk for a second, if we can, about the State of the Union address. President Obama and the White House are conveying that the president's message will be non-traditional. It will be optimistic, that even though the country is feeling anxious and nervous and unsettled about things, the president has an optimistic vision. You're somebody that won in no small part because of your ability to convey an optimistic vision. What's your take on what you want to hear from the president?
Well, I believe that anybody is better off when you focus on what we can achieve together. That optimistic message that I believe will win for Republicans in 2016. But what a non-traditional speech, State of the Union for the president, may mean is simply actually talking about working together with Congress in ways that he actually means it. In the past several State of the Unions, he's talked about ways to work with Congress and then turned around and stuck his finger in the eye of Congress, found ways to end-run Congress, issued executive orders, despite the fact that Congress has written laws to oppose those actions. Look at Guantanamo Bay, something very important to the people of Colorado. The law clearly states the president cannot spend money on the transfer of Guantanamo Bay detainees.
And just to be
and that's
clear,
exactly
it's
what he's
because
doing.
There's a supermax in Colorado, and there's talk of sending some of the Guantanamo prisoners to that supermax.
Well, they actually inspected another prison that's a closed prison in Colorado, where they would have to spend millions upon millions of dollars to prepare it for Guantanamo Bay detainees. But it doesn't matter if it's supermax or this closed prison that they're looking at, it's still in violation of the law. And yet the president is expending money in violation of the law to work on the transfer of Guantanamo Bay detainees. So a non-traditional speech by the president tonight would be one where he actually is sincere in his desire to work with Congress, where we can continue the successes that we've had this last year in the House and the Senate. A transportation bill passing for the first time in 18 years, an education bill passing for the first time in a decade. Those are the kinds of things the American people can expect from us if the president is willing to drop his partisanship, if the president is willing to work with us and not simply try to set the stage for the transition of his third term, and that's Hillary Clinton.
Okay. A lot more to discuss, but we don't have the time because of this breaking news out of Iran. Senator Gardner, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Good to see you. When we come back, much more on this breaking news. U.S. officials say 10 American sailors being held by Iran. We will go right to the White House for the latest after this quick break.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome back to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. Breaking news into CNN. Just minutes ago, U.S. officials say Iran has 10 American sailors in custody. Apparently, 2 small American boats, were en route from Kuwait to Bahrain when the U.S. lost contact with these boats. Joining me now, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest. Josh, what can you tell us about these 10 American sailors in Iranian custody?
Well, Jake, I can tell you that U.S. officials have been in touch with the Iranians about this situation. This is obviously a situation that we're monitoring closely. We've received assurances from the Iranians, both that our sailors are safe, that they're being sort of afforded care, the proper courtesy that you would expect. And we've also, most importantly, received assurances that they will be allowed to continue their journey promptly. So, this is the substance of the communications that we've had with the Iranians so far today, and it's a situation that we're going to continue to watch closely.
Josh, I know there's only so much you can say about this developing story, but did the Iranians accuse the American sailors of being in their waters? Did they give any sort of reason for taking 10 American sailors into captivity?
Well, Jake, the circumstances, we're still learning more about the precise circumstances of this particular incident, so I don't want to say anything based on the first unconfirmed information that we have at this point. The thing I can tell you is that we are watching this closely, and we have received assurances from the Iranians that our sailors are safe and that they will be allowed to continue their journey promptly.
Cory Gardner, senator from Colorado and Republican member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said that the White House needs to brief Congress before going through with the State of the Union address. This is a very alarming situation. Are there any plans to brief Congress, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, anyone up here?
Well, I'm confident that there'll be officials on the president's national security team who will be in touch with members of Congress to make sure they're aware of the conversations that we've had with the Iranians. But certainly everybody should be aware of the fact that we have been in touch with the Iranians and that they have assured us that our sailors are safe and that they'll be allowed to continue their journey promptly.
Josh, I know we booked you to talk about the State of the Union, and I will get to that because I know that you want to talk about that. But just one more question: what do you say to people who say Iran fired upon, not on, didn't hit, but fired a warning shot of sorts towards an American ship in the last couple weeks? They test fired, I believe, a ballistic missile in the last few weeks, and yet in a few days they are scheduled to have the relief of all those sanctions. The basic question being, this does not seem like a country that is ready to be welcomed back into the community of nations.
Yeah, that's right, Jake. And certainly the United States has been concerned with the kind of provocative, destabilizing actions that have been a hallmark of Iranian behavior over the last several decades, in fact. And that's why, that is why the United States and this president made it a priority to organize the international community to reach an agreement with Iran that will prevent them from obtaining a nuclear weapon. This agreement is actually the best way for us to ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. And based on them following through with their commitment to ship 98% of their uranium stockpile out of the country, which they followed through on over the holidays, Iran right now actually doesn't even have the nuclear material necessary to build one nuclear weapon. And we all did all that without a single American shot being fired. So that's an indication that we're making some progress in countering the threat that is posed by Iran.
I hear you, but they have 10 American sailors in their custody right now, Josh. I mean, I think there are probably a lot of Americans watching this thinking, why are we about to give them sanction relief? They have 10 Americans in wherever they have them, in a boat, in a cell, whatever.
Well, because these were sanctions that were imposed on Iran over their nuclear program, and as soon as Iran takes the steps that they've committed to take, and those steps that can be verified by international nuclear experts, then we'll know that Iran will not develop a nuclear weapon. That said, Jake, we're going to continue to have sanctions in place against Iran because of their support for terrorism. We're going to continue to have sanctions in place against Iran because of their continued development of their ballistic missile program. And we've been pretty clear about the fact that Iran is going to be subject to additional sanctions because of the tests they conducted at the end of last year. So, we continue to be concerned about this situation. That precisely is why the president made preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon a top national security priority, and we're making progress in actually accomplishing that goal.
Josh, I know you came here to preview the President's State of the Union. We're told that it's going to be a non-traditional speech. What can viewers expect to hear tonight?
Well, the president surely has plenty to talk about when it comes to all that we've accomplished over the last 7 years, and he's surely got a lot he wants to talk about in terms of what we hope to get done over the remaining year that the president has in office. But what the president is hoping to do is to use this opportunity to have a conversation with the American people about the longer-term challenges that are facing the country, but also the longer-term opportunities that are available if we actually make the right choices at this point in time. The president's going to talk first and foremost about the economy. We've seen our economy change dramatically over the last couple of decades because of technology. In some ways, that technology has allowed our economy to expand prosperity in ways that were previously unimaginable. But what's also true is we're seeing that technology is having an impact of eliminating jobs not just on the factory floor, but in a variety of sectors. And so what kind of policies can we put in place as a federal government to actually support our workforce as our economy goes through these changes, but also ensures that our workforce is positioned to benefit from those changes that we know are taking place and are only going to accelerate.
All right, Josh Earnest, thank you so much. Appreciate it, sir. When we come back, more on our breaking news. U.S. officials saying 10 American sailors are being held by Iran. We'll be back right after this quick break.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.